Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 105 of the Veterinary Behaviour Chat podcast. And today we're going to have another one of our amazing 15-minute speed coaching episodes. And today I'm joined by the lovely Sharon Jones, who actually I work with on a few cases in the UK and who is a behaviourist herself. So I'll get Sharon to introduce herself in a second. But yeah, it's so wonderful to have you with us, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here. So thank you.
Good. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey, kind of your career into behavior and training dogs, where you're based, a little bit about how we met.
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Sharon Jones. I'm based in Warrington in Cheshire in the UK. And I started my journey as a dog trainer because I had a doggy that struggled with his behaviour, and I have a miniature schnauzer called Chester. He's now 7 years old, and he struggled a lot with reactivity, with dog type reactivity. So I went on this massive journey of learning how to help him, and just got absorbed into this chasm of a rabbit hole of learning about dogs and dog behavior, and set up initially actually a part-time business, a hobby business as a dog trainer, and it's called Shape Your Dog, and it just grew and grew over time into now what is my full-time business, my full-time career. I had worked for myself previously for 27 years anyway, in the fitness industry and in coaching people and training people and people behavior to some degree. And now I sort of sandwich my people behavior knowledge and my dog behavior knowledge together to work really to try and create a space where both humans and dogs can thrive in the same space together. And that's really kind of my daily purposeful mission, really. Yeah.
I love that. And isn't it funny how many of us start on this journey because we ourselves have a pet or had a pet who kind of caused us to dive down that rabbit hole and look at dog behavior from a whole different perspective. And then how interesting that you've got that human behavior side of things as well, which is really cool. All right.
Which has been really important, actually.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, because without getting the humans on board, the dog behavior change is almost impossible, isn't it? So yeah, absolutely. All right. We are going to start our famous buzzer. Well, I'm going to start my stopwatch, which we will definitely need, because as I always say, if I didn't have my stopwatch next to me, we could probably carry on talking for hours. So we're going to restrict it to 15 minutes, and you've got a super interesting question and topic to talk about. So as soon as I press the button, I will say go, and then you can ask me your questions, and then we can brainstorm. All righty. I have pressed the button and we're off.
We're off. Okay. So I've worked on a small number of cases where a dog has lived in a house for a period of time, a few years, and generally speaking, they've had pretty much free reign of the house and been an important family member and a well-loved family member. And then a baby's come along, or a child has grown into a old enough child to start moving and crawling and moving around the house more. And then there's been problems started to flare up, and naturally management has been put in place initially, which might be baby gates or a house lead or muzzles or a combination of those things, or a crate. And because it's almost become an urgent issue to manage the dog and the child for safety reasons, there's been very little time to condition the dog to those things, and therefore I have found in some instances it could cause a lot of frustration, and they say sort of barrier frustration, where the dog's expectations have been violated in terms of what they had previously been allowed to do, and how they'd lived their life. And I find them probably the most difficult situations, and particularly when it's around children. So in one case, that I've been lucky enough that the dog's been allowed to go and live with an in-law which has really helped, and then given us the space and the time to condition him to barriers or to, you know, management in a lot of cases. It's just what you do when that option isn't available. And it's the dog gets clearly frustrated with this new form of management that's been put in place. So that's my big question. Any tips on that, really?
Yeah, and what a great question. I'm going to say right off the bat, there's probably not going to be a perfect answer for it, because I think, as you say, there are so many confounding factors that can potentially make it difficult. And actually, my first suggestion was going to be, can the dog go and live somewhere else for a period of time? Now, and maybe if, you know, in-laws aren't an option, you know, is there a doggy daycare or a really, really fantastic, positive board and train facility, or can the dog go and live with a trainer for a period of time? I know there are a number of trainers that do that, that kind of do homestays or home boarding periods. And again, it might not be that there's somebody available in the immediate vicinity, but those are options to explore. And I would probably also say, you know, hopefully we get hold of these cases ahead of time. That's, again, the ideal situation, is that, you know, we get hold of the cases ahead of time so that we can actually pre-plan these things.
Yeah.
But as we all know, that hardly ever happens. And it, you know, we only ever get to see these cases when it is, like you say, an urgent situation. But I would say, you know, wherever possible, if we're looking at it holistically, from a big picture point of view, holistically, we always want to see if we can pre-plan things. And then that out of home experience is probably a pretty good option where it's a possibility.
Yeah.
So aside from that, whenever we're kind of tackling any behavior case, I always kind of go back to my big pillars of treatment. So what have we got? We've got management options, we've got behavior modification options, we've got medication options, and then we've got all the things that go around it in terms of calming the nervous system, resilience training, and all that sort of thing. And I think sometimes when we get lost, and I sometimes get the same, when we get lost around one single piece of the puzzle, it's always really helpful to just kind of helicopter out again and just take that big picture view of, actually, hang on a minute, what are all the different boxes that I can access to try and find a solution? Management, I think we've already touched upon. And there I might actually, so aside from out of home management, I might try to start working for short periods on conditioning to barriers and choosing the barriers that cause the least frustration. So, for example, using some kind of a barrier, maybe even in the garden or outside of the home, conditioning maybe, you know, in a space that isn't necessarily going to be a high value space. So, you know, close to the dog's bed, close to the kitchen. I think it's always harder to condition in those areas that the dog naturally associates with very high value. So just, again, like decompressing everything and start the conditioning in a less, where you don't need to raise the criteria so much. So you might make faster steps towards.
That's a really good idea, actually, because I can think of a case at the minute where the muzzle training is probably taking place in the most higher value places, and actually to take them outside into a less valuable space. That's a really great idea, actually. Yeah.
It's always about thinking about the criteria, like how can we make it the easiest for the dog to learn in that moment? Because I think then we're going to make steps towards those higher value places more quickly. So potentially thinking about that. So, and then we can play around with increasing criteria, reducing criteria, increasing criteria. So, you know, we might only need 1 or 2 conditioning sessions in the less high value place. And then we can perhaps move it into the higher value place, but then take a step back again so that we're not constantly pushing the boundaries and pushing the criteria up too quickly. So I think those types of things, and then using things, if we really have frustration around a barrier, let's call it a baby gate or a closed door or a crate, then working with things like leashes and tethers, where the dog feels that they still have a space within the home. It might be a different type of barrier. And of course, we need to make sure that that is, you know, safe in terms of the collar or harness, ideally, that we would use, all that sort of thing. But just playing around with some of those different options. And whilst we're in that process and we're not yet fully conditioned, I always talk about 2 layers of safety.
Yeah.
So where we can't rely on either a muzzle or a baby gate or a crate or a door or a tether, we might need to double up on things. But again, let's say, for example, we're at a point in our muzzle training where the dog is able to cope with it for a short duration, 3, 4, 5 minutes. So having the muzzle on for that really short duration of time, but adding in a second layer so that we've got a baby gate or a door, so that we're always kind of moving within this fluidity of, hey, you don't need to do this for very long. We've got a backup plan so that, again, we're not, we must get this right straight away, because I think that becomes hard for everyone.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, the way I foresee one of the cases going is a muzzle and a house lead. They've already got a house lead in place, which is different to the dog's normal lead. It's just the house lead. It's much lighter, thinner lead. But the muzzle with the lead is that double layer, or the muzzle and the baby gate, or it might be the house lead and the baby gate. It's just having those 2 layers in, isn't it? Yeah,
exactly. And then you can relax the urgency around it. If you've got the 2 layers, it's not like, oh my God, if the muzzle fails, we're doomed kind of thing. We've got that sort of backup layer that can help us. So that would be, I think, a little bit to think about in terms of management. When it comes to behavior modification or training exercises, and this is definitely your area of expertise, but any kind of frustration management, frustration tolerance exercises, and again, starting with really low criteria and just building that in, on a kind of almost as a game, while the kettle boils, the caregiver can do something. So we don't turn it into a drill, but that we address this, hey, trying to get some emotional regulation going there in terms of understanding what really triggers the frustration and where that frustration then boils over into behaviors that become more unmanageable, so that we can catch it before that happens.
And I do tend to do games that are problem solving, but on a tiered level of difficulty. So start really easy, kind of get to the point where they kind of get to do it easy and get lots of wins, and then gradually start to increase the challenge over time. And definitely do things like that.
Perfect. And then at the same time, we want to be thinking, as we're talking about sort of self-regulating emotions, we want to be talking about regulation of the nervous system. So making sure that the dog's getting enough sleep, making sure that they've got enough decompression time. So within that day, especially if we've got a new baby in the house, what are going to be some things that help the dog to actually just empty their stress bucket, whether that's an off-leash walk, maybe with another family member or a friend or a neighbor that can come over and help, because it might be that dog's routine is being disrupted and they're maybe not getting as many walks as they are used to, because we've got a newborn in the home and mum and dad need to focus their attention elsewhere. So making sure that we still build in enough decompression time, we've got good quality sleep, that the dog is maybe not being disrupted by the baby waking at night, right? All of those things. And so if there are sleep disruptions during the night, how can we build that in during the day for the dog? How can we, create a safe sleeping space for them? Licking, chewing, sniffing, nose work games, free work, all those things that help with emotional regulation, off-leash walks, sniffy walks, playtime with other dogs that's not arousing, but that's decompressing. All of those pieces.
That's really important. I think with one case I'm thinking of, we've managed to get the dog really very happy walking with the pram, with the baby in the pram, and he's fine with that. And he's actually fine with the baby in the garden as well. It's the actual house that's the high value space for him. And the difficulty with that dog is a difficulty is that he used to sleep on the bed with the caregivers, with the owners, and their bed, and now the cot is in the bedroom. So he's once he's full-time back in the house, he's going to have to learn to sleep in a different place as well.
Exactly. And so these are all these routine changes where the dog's like, whoa, and it takes some time to adjust that and to kind of turn those things around. So I think even just thinking about those and how that can be managed. And then the final big box, because we're running out of our 15 minutes, I just want to go there. The final big box is using medications, pheromones, supplements, diets. So any additional aids or support tools that we can use. In some cases, we might even need to consider a short-acting psychopharmaceutical, right? Just to get through the initial period, to help reduce some of that frustration. That's going to be case by case, depending on the individual dog. If they're showing high arousal, we might be thinking about something like clonidine, or maybe tasipimidine, which is a new product which can be given for about 10 days or perhaps even slightly longer. If we're trying to bridge a specific period of time, could we be thinking about calming supplements, maybe already even in the run up to the baby coming home from hospital? So Zilkine, Angzitane, Carmex, some of those are great. And then, of course, the pheromone products. For dogs, we're talking about Adaptil. For cats, we'd be talking about Feliway. Again, just to kind of create that safe and secure space for the dog in a world that is kind of changing slightly as these new family members come in. And I think they can also be really helpful adjuncts. And frustration in particular, I mean, if we're expecting this to, be an ongoing thing over a few months or maybe even years, long-acting medication, fluoxetine is great for frustration. So our SSRIs, and that then depends on the case, whether we need something really for longer or it's just a short-term thing. We can help give something before a training session to help reduce arousal so the dog can learn better. So that would be my next big box, but it's always thinking about the full package, the 360, the multimodal piece of that.
And with the short-acting medications, I'm never clear. Is it something the dog, just quickly gets?
Yeah, we've still got
for a couple of hours and then it runs out for the event itself, the actual event, or is it something that's given daily so that the initial days, if not a couple of weeks of the reintroduction back into the house could work just to soften and cushion that period? Is it like right, we're going to let them be together for half an hour and let's use the medication for that half an hour? Or is it the dog gets it every day for the 2 weeks, or in terms of the short acting?
Yeah, can be both. And I would say if it's a period of time, let's say a couple of weeks that we're thinking are going to be challenging, then we would be giving it every single day to help them through that period of time. If later on we want to manage specific events, or if maybe we've got a slightly different case around barrier frustration, then it might just be in that one-off event. But I'd probably say in a case like baby coming home, you'd probably want to have a period of time where the dog is just a little bit more relaxed and chilled, and we're able to give a psychopharmaceutical over that course of time.
Yeah. Okay. That's really good. Actually, yeah. We got it in 15 minutes. Right.
I know. I kept looking at the watch and thinking, wait, I need to get the meds in.
And I'm like, could I ask that? No, I shouldn't, because it's going to take too long.
Oh no, you'll hear the ringer when it goes off. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you. That's actually really helpful. So thank you.
Oh, good. I'm pleased. And it's always really interesting in these tricky cases, and especially when you haven't got time to prepare and you're in this kind of first aid situation, and then you're like, okay, now we need to do something really quickly. But I really love the thing that you mentioned first, where the dog actually has the opportunity to go and live somewhere else for a little bit of time and be conditioned to barriers in that space, away from all the stress.
Because it's a lot for the parents, isn't it? The whole hormonal shifts for the mum, and coming back from hospital having just given birth, and there's like a household bucket, full, very full. You're working with. That's brilliant. Thank you.
My pleasure. So why don't you let everyone know how they can get a hold of you if anybody is in your part of the world? So we're talking Cheshire in the United Kingdom. If anybody is in the UK, up in that sort of area, how can they get hold of you?
Yeah, so I tend to specialise in small breed reactivity cases. So I work with a lot of miniature schnauzers, which are my love of my life, and dash hounds and cockapoos and dogs like that. So I'm in Warrington in Cheshire. I do work all over Warrington, Cheshire and Lancashire kind of area, a little bit of Merseyside. So I do travel. Some of my work is in person, a lot of it, and I do some work online as well. So if you know anybody who has a small barky dog in any shape or form, that's who I love to work with, and I love to work with people. It's Shape Your Dog is my company. So it's www.shapeyourdog.co.uk, or go to Facebook and just search for Shape Your Dog with Sharon Jones, and I'll come up there. So thank you very much for that.
No worries. So we'll pop that in the show notes. And then for anybody who has been listening and has enjoyed kind of the 15-minute speed coaching, you can either apply to appear on a 15-minute speed coaching yourself, or if you have a case that you'd like me to help you with, you can book a one-to-one, either vet to vet or vet to pet care professional consult. They are either 30 minutes or 60 minutes in length, depending on what you need. And I will put the link in the show notes for that as well. And if you'd like to learn more about veterinary psychopharmacology, I also have an amazing psychoactive course, which deep dives into all the medication options. And I think that's really relevant both for vets who would be prescribing the meds, but also for anyone who's working with dogs or cats that just want to know a little bit more about how medications can play a role and how they work. So yeah, that leaves just for me to say thank you so much, Sharon, for joining me today. I really appreciate your question. That was a cool one. And I think one that a lot of people will be able to relate to. And I'm sure many of us have worked with similar cases. So thank you for bringing that to the table today.
And thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. And I love working with you as well. So thank you for that. It's great. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in this week. And I will see you next week for episode 106 of the Veterinary Behaviour Chat. Bye for now.